Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, Adam, Caplan, another Inside the Birds that brings us closer and closer to the NFL draft. We are, about 3 weeks away here?
Exactly.
So exactly 3 weeks away, Adam, and there's a lot of intrigue. There's some questions. There's some topics. The Eagles have recently made a big trade that has shaken up the draft a little bit. We'll talk about that. We'll get into some of the visits. There are some interesting names, including one specific visit that is going to invite a conversation that we haven't had in a little while. So I look forward to talking about that. Got a few contract details as well. Probably going to be one of our less, meatier Inside the Birds. We're going to go, straight to the hard news and get in, get out. And obviously we'll keep having more content for you throughout the week. Greg Cosell's show has dropped. Wednesday morning it dropped, the Intel with Greg Cosell. We focused on cornerbacks and safeties. And if you're a real diehard Eagles fan, I'm thinking you've already caught that show because as you and I have talked about, Adam, this is a position. It's funny because I was doing the Football at 4 interview with Mike Gill today, and yesterday, he starts asking me about cornerback opposite Darius Slay and safety and whether you address that in free agency and the draft. And I said, doesn't this sound like a conversation we have every single year? I mean, the Eagles could come off a 4-win season or a playoff season, and yet we're still having the same cornerback, linebacker, safety question every freaking year. It's kind of weird that way, don't you think?
Yeah, look, that's always the talk. And when we get into Kyzir White's, we'll break down his contract numbers. Very interesting. It's always remember when they come out, when it says up to, that means it's coming from the agent almost certainly.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll break that down and we'll explain what it really means. We've got the full details and Boston Scott's deal too. I'm a little surprised that he got what he got, but good. I've always been a fan, but good for him and the agent. We'll get into that. And look, we're to the day. It's Thursday morning. We're exactly 3 weeks away, and all of a sudden, it's getting up there. And I have to tell you, and you've probably heard it already, if you've heard it on the pod version, our show with Greg Cosell, the Intel with Greg Cosell, that we covered cornerbacks and safeties. We went just under an hour. I felt we could have done an hour and a half. It was that good. It was wonderful. And then next week we do defensive D-line, defensive tackle, and DN. Can't wait for that one because, as you first reported, one of those DNs visited the Eagles.
Yes, that's right. We will talk about that a little bit. I thought Greg was awesome with his breakdowns. Not like he's always good, but really in breaking down who's good for what specific schemes, who does certain things well and why they do it well. So like you said, that was almost an hour. We went through, I don't know, we had to get between 20 and 30 prospects at the both cornerback and safety positions before all was said and done. And obviously this is a position you and I expect the Eagles put to both positions to hit pretty hard in the draft and continuing with free agency, maybe 1-year deals for guys. So it's something that you really should pay attention to. We talked about this. I know that some people are skeptical that the Eagles would ever take a cornerback in the first round, and you could probably put us in that a cornerback in the first round. I
wouldn't be skeptical at all.
I think people are skeptical at it because they haven't done it since 2002. I was skeptical of it until last year when they actually had, real interest in either a J.C. Horn or Surtain, but it just worked out that they couldn't get one. But to be honest with you, when you go 18, 19 years without drafting a corner in the first round, that's fair and honest skepticism.
No, I understand that part, but thinking like they won't do it. I mean, this is not. Now we could argue they've gotten away with safety for years because they had Rodney McLeod.
Right.
They've had Malcolm Jenkins. They've gotten away with it because they've nailed these free agent moves.
Sure.
It's typically not the way you want to do it, but they've gotten away with it. But now they're in a spot now at safety. They're not going to get away with it any longer. They're going to have to do something. How early they do it, I know you would raise your hands and jump for joy, jump out of your chair, probably sprain an ankle or something. But
well, we'll see.
But corner, look. Mm-hmm. No, I'm just going to say, I know they haven't addressed it, but they have to. They don't have a choice right now. Where are they getting a corner?
There's as we outlined in the last pod, there's about 6 or 7 Steven Nelson-esque type corners out there, but
It's
Yeah.
not good enough. Come on. Not good
So I
enough.
do want to address that. Some people have asked
Sure.
us, about Steven Nelson and what's so bad about him. And I think perception and reality on Steven are a little different. And I'll tell you why I think that. For the longest time, when Jim Schwartz was running the defense, if the Eagles didn't have a very good corner, you could see it you could just straight up see it because Jim played a single high safety defense, and that lent to the Eagles defense getting beat over the top constantly. So when it was Rasul Douglas or when it was Craig Davis or whoever you want to say, Nolan Carroll, anybody that you put out there
Oh, Nolan
getting
Carroll.
beat over the top, right? You could see it and lament it. We would constantly hear that from Eagles fans. Oh my God, these corners aren't good. These aren't good. Last year, the Eagles did not get beat over the top a whole lot. And so I think that led people to believe that Steven Nelson at least held the fort down good enough. Why wouldn't they just bring him back on another 1 year? But that's where you have to look at the defense as a whole and what Jonathan Gannon was doing, right? We talked about how deep he was playing a safety to protect a safety or two to protect his corners, or how he very rarely blitzed because he was afraid to leave certain guys, Steven Nelson being one, in single coverage, right? So if you found yourself not yelling Steven Nelson like, oh, I can't believe he's getting beat, but you found yourself mad at Jonathan Gannon for not blitzing or playing for a really soft defense, which most Eagles fans were mad at, well, that's because of the personnel that we talked about. And you and I would talk to, whether it was Quentin Michael, Jason Avant, other coaches or executives around the league who watch Eagles tape, and they would say, man, they're really protecting Steven Nelson. He's getting
Yes.
beat out there, but you're
Yes.
just not seeing it
Yes.
because either they've got a safety way deep there, or they're just not even forcing the issue because they're protecting him.
Yeah, and that was my point. That's why I said when you first said, "Oh, we would be surprised." I'm like, I would be shocked if they don't draft a corner. Remember now, let's reset.
Mm-hmm.
They still have 10 picks, right? They have 15 and 18 in the first round.
Right.
After this trade, they have 15th overall. And again, what surprised me so much about the Saints trade is why the Eagles were able to keep the first of the three first rounders, which surprised me.
Yeah.
But anyway, they pick 15, 18, and then 51 overall, which is the second round pick. I would be shocked if one of those three picks is not a corner. I would be like, they cannot line up today. I understand we're only in April. I get that part of it. Yes, they signed Ronald Darby or traded for Ronald Darby in August of 2017. But folks, you can't depend on that. You just can't.
I'm with you.
Address it. Address it. You got a 31-year-old corner on the other side. And the thing that we mentioned last year was, boy, they're playing with fire here. They got very lucky that Slay was durable. I mean, he's a good player. He's got a history of playing through minor injury, but they're just lucky that he didn't get hurt. Because what have they done?
That's a great
Think
question.
about it. It's ridiculous.
It would have been it would have been as ugly as it was 2 years ago when you had Michael Jacquet and I
Oh,
guess Craig Davis out there, or Avante
Craig
Maddox
James.
even
Craig James.
Craig James, right, being and Avante Maddox being miscast as an outside corner, and that team was
Oh,
constantly beat over the top and constantly struggled, even across the middle with good wide receivers because they just weren't good enough at corner. Yeah, and when he's off the field, if Darius Slay is off the field, even if the Eagles draft the corner in the first round, even if they get Sauce Gardner, if Slay gets hurt, you're back to kind of like, oh man,
well,
you're worried,
well, no, that's what I said on the last show. I said they need not one. They must come out, whether it's free agency and the draft combined, however they do it, to start training camp in late July. They must have two new outside corners, at least one in the draft, if not two, of
Mm-hmm.
significance. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
one's got to be with one of the now where they're at right now, one of the first three picks, and it would behoove them to get a veteran. Zach McPherson, you don't know what he is. He was a fourth round pick, barely played. He's a developmental player who's not ready yet. So here
Right.
are the guys. Stephon Gilmore's out there. Janoris Jenkins is out there. As Greg Cosell told us when we had our free agent series with him, Harris is really just a slot corner now. Yeah, the Eagles had interest in him 2 years ago, though we're told they never made him an offer. They definitely looked into it, but they didn't make him an offer. Kyle Fuller still could play, is out there. Trey Waynes,
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Callahan's a slot. Mackenzie Alexander, Joe Hayden. There are a lot of guys out there. Like they could patchwork it for a year if they want to do that. But please spend a high pick. I don't think I have to say please. I would be shocked if they don't do this. I'm going to say, what are they trying to be a championship team? Get
Well,
a young
that's a
corner.
that's a
Come on.
that's a fair that's a good
Sorry.
question, and it leads into some of our discussion tonight about where the Eagles are picking. And I'll lob a question at you in a minute or two and see how you feel about it.
Okay.
First, just to finish off on
Yeah.
some of the things that we have alongside Greg Cosell's great show on safeties and corners. Andrew DeCecco had a really awesome interview with South Dakota State safety Michael Griffin, a kid who was not invited to the combine, but had a chance to get to the NFLPA Bowl because of an injury. By the way, it was a really interesting story. You got to hear it. It's on our platform. And then he had his pro day in Adam.
Oh,
I don't know if you saw
I
what he
did.
did at his pro
I actually
day.
saw the tape. I watched the.
I'm
It's
not
just
going
so
to give it
funny.
away, but it was incredible.
It's just you have to see the video. Search it on you. You could find it on Twitter. The video's up there. Or you could probably find it on YouTube. He's from South Dakota State, Michael Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable, and what a nice kid. What a great interview, Andrew. I love this series, Draft Dreams, right? I think it's called.
Draft Dreams with Andrew DeCecco, checking out these small college
Yep.
prospects who are going to get drafted and make a name for themselves. It's a fantastic series that he's been doing. And yeah, Michael Griffin, great kid, smart kid, engaging, good personality, and he'll, I suspect he'll get drafted, and we'll see what happens with him. You root for a guy like that. He has a nice journey from being an unknown guy to playing in college football and then getting a chance to get drafted.
And we're working on one or two more of Super Sleeperville. Like Michael Griffin's a super sleeper guy.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on one or two more for the Andrew's last two. But we love bringing this to you, man. You guys love the draft, and as you were saying on our last show, in between, with Andrew stuff and Cosell stuff, we're going to probably have covered roughly 150 plus players, which we've never even come close to doing. We're talking about actually more than that because we'll get to quarterbacks. Oh, for the people that asked, and I'm glad you guys asked because that remind me. On our last show with Greg, the players that we didn't cover of certain positions, we got you guys covered. We'll get them. I know. You guys are out there and asked for this. There's some. There'll be some 10 to 15 leftover players which Greg has not gotten to yet. Jalen Petrie's of the world, who's a guy that's going to, he's going to get drafted in the first two rounds. We'll take care of you guys, we promise. But once Greg gets to that tape, we'll put that on our last show with him. We promise.
Awesome. Looking forward to that as well. All right, let's move on. Let's get into some of the important topics here tonight. And I told you I was going to lob a question at you. First, let's just recap what the Eagles did. They made a trade with the Saints. The Eagles at one point were picking 15, 16, 19. They trade both 16 and 19 to the Saints, along with, I think, a sixth rounder. And what they got back was the 18th overall pick, a future first round pick next year, a second round pick in 2 years, and they also added a third rounder for this year and a sixth rounder this year. There was another late pick. Yeah.
So the five picks it got is 18th overall, the Saints pick, third rounder, 101 overall, a seventh rounder, 237 overall, the Saints first round pick next year. And folks, I'm telling you, I would be very surprised if Jameis Winston is not the starter. Well, he's come back from a torn ACL. Even if they draft, let's say, Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis, they're not in good shape at quarterback right now. And by the way, you got the Alvin Kamara legal situation. You got a new head coach, a new play call on offense, Pete Carmichael, who is Sean Payton's right-hand man. So they've got some uncertainty. And also they got the second rounder, as you mentioned, in 2024. So the belief around the league, as you and I have checked into this, we got a lot of opinions. Mostly overall, people think around the league that the Eagles won this trade. My sense is one way or the other, the Eagles are going to trade one of these picks of the three. And then they got it done now, which is not what any of us were expecting. That, to get it done this early is pretty interesting. So, look, it's good. They were able to move that pick. They got the future compensation. We were talking about them getting a first for next year, potentially other picks. They were able to do that. It's a good job by GM Howie Roseman. And they still have 10 picks in this year's draft. So those are 15 overall, 18 overall, 51 overall. So 3 picks in the first 2 rounds, 5 in the first 3. 2 in the third, 83 and 101. Fourth round, 124 overall. 3/5, 154, 162, 166, and that seventh round are 237 overall. And knowing the way this GM works, I'd be shocked if they kept 10 picks. I
I
just
would be
right,
stunned if they kept all 10 picks. Yes.
right. So now we'll just see. You and I were talking privately about this
Hmm.
because, as you first reported, Sauce Gardner's going to visit this coming weekend. You also reported that we'll get into the other visits, and there's
Yep.
another into the quarterback one was really interesting. So I'm not saying the draft for the quarterback in the first. We know we've said for 2 or 3 months now, unless they get Watson or Wilson, it ain't happening. They're going to go with what they have, which is Hurts. But it doesn't preclude them though from drafting quarterback after the first round.
No, that's one of the things I wanted to
Yeah,
ask you. The first question I want to lob at you, which is based on what we just talked about before about their need at cornerback for a young corner. Look, Sauce Gardner is a guy that I reported that is taking a visit this weekend, I believe, to the NovaCare.
yeah,
They've showed a lot of pre-draft interest in him. We both know from our just separate homework that this guy is not only the top cornerback prospect in the draft, but I was told you can make an argument that he's the top overall prospect in the draft. And by the way, it's considered a good. We've said this a strong draft in certain positions and deep, but not a superstar laden type of draft. You go back a couple of years where Myles Garrett was the number one overall pick, right? And there was no question about Myles Garrett's ability because of his production, his athleticism, his testing, everything like that. What I get is Aiden Hutchinson has a chance to be a pretty good player, but I don't know if they look at him even as a number one pick the same way as Myles Garrett. So that's my
correct,
point. This draft
correct,
is
correct.
got some good positional talent, but as far as superstars, we'll see. So my question to you is, if Ahmad Gardner does not go in the top 5, if he gets into that 6, 7, 8 range, something like that, if you're Howie Roseman, do you think it makes sense to package 15 and 18 to get up and get him?
Yes, yes.
I agree with
Whatever.
you.
Here's why. And I really took this to heart when Bill Polian was explaining this to us. We've had Bill on. We'll try to get him up for the draft, but he was talking about just the way that he said it. You never pass up the opportunity to get an upgrade. And no, Darius Slay still. I mean, we could debate what elite means. He's just really, really good. Okay, he's just he's a very good football player. Does turn 32 in January, so you figure maybe he's got 2 really good years left in him. They don't have a number 2 corner outside. They don't have a number 3. We'll see about McPherson if he could be the third guy. They must get, if you got a chance to get an elite player like Ahmad Gardner, you go get him. I don't care. And by the way, remember now, the draft is about the future. Frenchie, for the most part, is about immediate needs. Go get this guy. Stingley is not even close to Gardner in terms of talent. Gardner, the kid had one. Stingley had one monster year his first year. He hasn't played a lot of football in the last 2 years. Stingley's extremely talented, but Gardner is, if you look at all the metrics, size, weight, speed, tape also, which is phenomenal. Clean off the field. Upside. Go get this kid. If he gets, as you said, I agree with your assessment. If he gets past 5, go get him. Go get him. I know it's a lot, but you're setting yourself up potentially for the next 6 to 8 years with this kid if you could get him. Now,
Right.
Stingley, we'll get it. Cosell talked about him in this show that we did with him this week, and we're going to have way more intel on his Lisfranc injury, where he's at, coming back from it. That's a serious injury. He actually talked about that at his pro day. His pro day was fine.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, look, it's because after those corners, now the good thing is Cosell outlines, there's a lot of good corners in this draft. But when don't settle for being just good or very good. If you have a chance to get an elite guy like Gardner, go get him.
Yeah. And by the way, I assume that it would maybe take 15 and 18 to do that, to get into that 6, 7, 8 range, but you're not going
Yeah,
up for a quarterback. And if nobody else is trading up there for a quarterback, you might be able to get away with 15 and a second round. I don't know. I mean, it depends on whether you go strictly by the value chart or whether you understand, whether the team you're talking to wants to move down, but nobody else is calling up because nobody wants a quarterback at that spot. Okay, so they may have to take the best offer that they can get if they want to move down and pick up an extra pick. So you might, if you're Howie, you might be able to get up there using your 15 and a second and something else instead of both first round picks. I don't know. Not going to pretend to know. I'm just saying usually you definitely have to give up 2 first rounders to get up there for a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a little different to go up for a cornerback, depending on how badly the team that you're talking to wants to move out of that slot. I've heard that this will be the type of draft where a lot of people are going to want to move down and a lot of teams are going to want to move up. So we'll see. Also, nobody really, I don't want to say nobody studies analytics more than the Eagles, but we know that nobody does more. I mean, equally maybe, but nobody puts more. And they will tell you slot by slot in the draft what the hit percentages are.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You've already heard both Howie and Jeffrey Lurie talk about when you're picking, once you start getting out of the 10 and then 10 to 15 and then 15 and lower, you go from a hit percentage of over 60 in the top 10 to really quickly 55, 50 and under. So you're looking at 18 overall and 15 overall as a 50 to 55% chance of hitting on that, right? So if you know how analytically driven they are, if you're talking about moving up for a guy in the top 10 who has a 60 to 65% chance of not only becoming a starter, but that's where you get like 80% of your Pro Bowlers and All Pros, then to them, it's going to make a lot of sense from a value standpoint. So I agree with you. I would make the deal. We talked a lot, Adam, about why it was very unlikely for them to make 3 first-round picks. I even wrote a story about it on InsideTheBirds.com. I hope everybody check it out. But at the end of the day, if you look at the history, so the Giants, the Browns, the Vikings, and I'm missing it, and Cleveland Giants, Browns, and there's another team in there that I can't think of, have all made 3 first-round picks in the last 10 years. And what you'll see is, and we've said this a couple of times, I mean, I can give you the name. They're just, it's Dolphins. That's the other team. Just not that good, all said and done. There have been some good individual picks, mind you, like Cleveland getting Myles Garrett, but that's because that was the number 1 overall pick. So, obviously the Raiders, it's less about percentages and more the fact that they blew it on Cleveland Ferrell, 4th overall. But, Josh Jacobs was 24th and Jonathan Abram 27th. Those are good players, but they're not. Those guys aren't the reason why the Raiders are what they were last year. Max Crosby, Derek Carr. They had a good pass rush. Jacobs was good. He was okay, but he was hurt a little bit too. And Abram was just okay, as I understood.
He's been hurt a lot.
Right. So with the Browns, I mean, of course they got Myles Garrett, but then their other 2 picks that year were David Njoku. We talked about that he's okay, and Jabril Peppers, who wasn't even with the team. The Vikings wound up taking, and this is in 2013, they wound up taking Sharif Floyd, Cordarrelle Patterson, and Xavier Rhodes. And now
Rhodes a hit.
Rhodes is hit, but so the point almost feels like if you have 3 first-round picks, you're probably going to hit on 2 of them. So you almost have a waste of a pick there. So if you can take one of your 3 first-rounders and turn it into a future first, which they've done, and then maybe package that to move up next year, then you've just, again, increased your hit percentage. And I would agree. If you package 15 and 18, move up into the top 10, get yourself a top 10 caliber player, who I think that's the only one they would do it for. I don't know that for a fact, but it's too deep in pass rushers, Adam, I would think, for them to move up into the top 10, unless like Aiden Hutchinson fell to 7 or 8 or something and they really liked him. But
here's why. Just to add to what you're saying, if you just went overall value, okay, tape study over a value when you're putting a value chart together by position. Hutchinson's probably number 1. You can make a case that Sauce Gardner's number 2.
Yeah.
If you put together, if you were building a team from scratch, as Gil Brandt told me, mentioned this in the last show, it was quarterback, left offensive tackle, right defensive end, and corner.
Mm-hmm.
It's Hutchinson. Thibodeau's down the list. He may go in the top 10, but he's nowhere close to Hutchinson in talent. Safety, you just don't. Hamilton. Look, I would be not shocked, but very surprised that they drafted Hamilton, or if they traded up for him. It's just not. I don't see it. It's not something they would do.
Right.
But Gardner, look, I know you're right when you say they haven't really addressed it the last decade or so. They just haven't really addressed it high since the days of Leto, was a first round pick. But
Yeah,
this is just a unique opportunity. They've got 2 firsts right now, and they've got 10 picks, and they have a major need at corner.
they do. I think it would be justifiable.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the other visits. So as you mentioned, I reported this week that Kayvon Thibodeau took a visit with the Philadelphia Eagles. He is a defensive end who is a little bit polarizing. I know some people I've spoke to and you spoke to like him, but also think that for a D end, he's not maybe as explosive or a little bit stiffer
Mhm.
than he is kind of agile. I mean, he's still a good player. He's probably going to go top 10. He may slip out a little
Should be.
bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
should be.
no, he's a guy that if he falls out of the top 10, Adam, maybe you trade up from 15 to like 12 to get like kind of the way the Eagles went from 12 to 10 for Devontae Smith, where you're not giving up another first round picker or something of great significance. But he's an interesting player. He's no doubt about it. He's got great size and length.
And remember, with Ajabo from his torn Achilles, you're not going to see him on the field till the probably late summer, and it'll be limited. And wherever he gets drafted, wherever he goes, you're talking about realistically being on NFI, non-football injury, which is it's a football injury, but it happened the way it has to work is if you get hurt before the draft, you go on NFI.
Mm-hmm.
Then a team, whoever drafts him, has to make a decision. Do they think he could play within the allotted weeks, where he goes in reserve NFI? So you have
Right.
to make that decision once you get him. But the guy, I'll tell you what, the guy at DM, we're going to talk about him next week. No one, it's generally a fallacy to say that guys are moving up because it doesn't really happen very much.
Right.
But in Jermaine Johnson's case, he's going to move up because he's had one of the strongest off seasons of anyone for this draft
Right.
on either side of the football.
Right.
He's now would it shock me if Jermaine Johnson went above Thibodeau? It would surprise me. It would surprise me.
Right.
Karlaftis we'll talk about next week, but Jermaine Johnson started the Senior Bowl where he just absolutely dominated. He he went from being a late one, early two. Not only do I believe he'll go in the mid first, I'm not ruling out top 10 because that's how good his. When guys dig in, when personnel people we've spoken to say they've dug in, the more they like him. But we'll get more information over the next 3 weeks.
So he started the process as more of a late one, early two.
That's what I was told. Yeah, that's
This
kind
is
of it's
this.
just more work. Coaches get
Mhm.
involved, and that's kind of where they're at. So, good player, man. It's just sometimes you don't hear a lot about a guy until you really dig in and see what's real and what's not. But he was
Right.
so good at the Senior Bowl. Look, you and I know this. We've covered this business for decades. You know what happens at the Senior Bowl? Yeah,
Yes.
Danny Watkins is the most extreme case because he was so good there and so dominant. Obviously turned out to be a mistake, and you don't want
Right.
to overrate the Senior Bowl. But it's Senior Bowl combine. He's a DN. Or he can actually play in both stand-up pass rusher, 34 front,
Right.
or he could play down with his hand down. So I just want to bring this up because of Thibodeau, and as you were saying, how some personal people don't like him, maybe as much as some other people do.
Okay. Interesting. Mark my words on this. This is not intel. This is not reporting. This is not anything that even got passed on to me by a third party. This is just my own sense from knowing what teams like to do.
Yep.
The Chiefs have 2 first round picks, don't they? Like right at the end of the draft because they traded Tyreek Hill. Didn't they get an extra first rounder?
Yes,
Or
I just don't have the. I'll look it up, but yes, they do.
I think they have like back-to-back picks in the bottom of the first round. If David Ajabo is available, the Chiefs will jump on that like a luxury pick all day long. I guarantee you that.
Oh yeah, look,
I'd be stunned if he was available and they passed
I,
up on him 2 straight
I, I
picks.
I talked to a personnel director who told me as soon as it happens because I guarantee he'll go in the back of round one
Mhm.
because those teams. Here's why: Kansas City is 29-30. If you're going to take a job on the first round, you have to assume that he'll play very little or not be himself in year one, even if he plays,
Right.
and you don't need him to play in year one. Well,
Right.
you're going to be secure in your job,
Mhm.
okay? Andy Reid, pretty secure in his job. Brett Veach,
Yep.
pretty secure in
Brett
their
Veach,
job.
secure. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, here's another one for you. The Lions have the 32nd pick overall. They're terrible. It's from the Rams trade, but the Stafford trade. So the question is, would you, if you're the Lions, where you need major, their defense is horrendous. It's just don't have enough talent. Would you take that chance on a guy that you know probably won't help you? I would do it. It's about year two for a guy off the Achilles, not year one. So I would, geez, I would do it.
Mm, well, it
It's a little
depends. Am
risky,
I
but
am I taking Aiden Hutchinson number one overall or number two? I guess.
yeah, they have number two, right? Correct. Here's the thing: in this business, you cannot have enough pass rushers
True. I
or
mean, that would be
corners.
crazy to take the two guys who were teammates, by the way, at
I hear
Michigan.
you. I know, but you could use them differently. Now they run a 34
Yep.
under Aaron Glenn. Charles Harris is a great story for them. He finally showed something.
Yeah.
They need defensive help, man. The worst way. You got to help out Aaron Glenn, but it's interesting. It's good chatter at this time.
It is good chatter. It might also be a sneaky good spot for them to go quarterback if they like somebody who is still on the board
Sure.
at that point, which would be like kind of reverse. They get the pass rusher number one overall and then the quarterback instead of vice versa. So that would be pretty interesting. Speaking of quarterbacks, so one person who's either has or has had a visit with the Eagles is Matt Corral, the Ole Miss quarterback. He must. I think he talked about this on. With Rich Eisen or somebody.
Yeah. He gave
Yeah,
out his list and he mentioned how much he liked visiting the Eagles. So he's already done it. He's fine coming off the high ankle. It was never going to be an issue. The
right.
question is, he's got a lot of ability. He's got a strong arm. He's just under 6'2". There's a lot
Hmm.
to like about him. This is a draft. I mean, this happens every time you don't think a guy will go in the first round or top 20. He goes there. I've used
Right.
it as the Mark Sanchez example. If you need a quarterback, you're going to draft a quarterback. You can't wait. It's the one position where I'm not saying would be overdrafted go in the first round. I've said all along I felt like that he'd go in the first round. I just don't
Right.
know how high. We're not there yet on his intel, but we'll have that for you. But I find it interesting that they brought him in. But what and let's look at it where they're picking the second round. 51. I got to think he goes before 51. I can't imagine a quarterback that gifted is going to even make it anywhere close to 51. But I just find it
Mm.
interesting that they brought him in.
I do too, and I think it invites the conversation that we haven't had in a while because there really hasn't been a conversation about Eagles quarterbacks. It's
Yeah,
been Jalen Hurts.
but,
They didn't get a
yeah,
chance to
yeah.
get anybody else, but we did say probably a month ago, maybe, and a couple of times that there should be an expectation that the Eagles will look at quarterback in this draft, just not the
Okay.
first round.
Yeah,
But anytime from second to seven is on the table. And that's not us saying that they're trying to replace Jalen Hurts now with anybody from this draft. That's more on this is a team that has a very unique pattern and history of how they treat this position. And you can just never rule out if they like a guy ever since 2020, the way they took Jalen in the second round, that you can't rule out the idea of them
well,
taking a quarterback in the second round. Because think about it, if Jalen doesn't seize the job this year, after this year, he's going to be due an extension. It's going to be after 3 years. They may want to move on, not have to give him that extension. Maybe want to trade him, and then bam, if they've got a kid that they drafted this year, they can compare that versus what they're able to get in the draft next year. You just never know. They love options at
all
quarterback.
right.
They
Let
love
me
options.
real quick. So here's what the Eagles wanted to do when they drafted Hurts. Their hope was for the first 3 years he'd be a great backup for Wentz because Wentz's injury history. Although he did a great job last year of staying healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, he had the stress fracture, but he still was able to start every game.
Yep.
But based on his injury history with the Eagles were thinking, hey, he'll be a great backup. And if he has to play, which was probably probable, if his tape's good, they could flip it for a 2 or a 1. Look what A.J. Feely got, a second-round pick,
Amazing,
right?
right?
Right, as a
Yeah,
fifth rounder, right? And he got precedent service because Coy Detmer and McNabb got hurt. So
right.
in this league, it's all about quarterbacks. But we know what happened. The strangest things, one of the strangest stories we could ever remember happened. And the crazy thing is, this is how time flies. So that was 2020. This is his third
Mhm.
year. 23 is the final year of his deal. They'll have to, they're going with their eyes wide open. They're hopeful with Hurts. Obviously everybody likes him, but it's got to be better.
Yeah.
And but as you said, they'll see what happens. Then remember also Gardner Minshew. This is the last year of his rookie deal. So
Right.
the quarterback position with this football team past 22 is very uncertain.
And also, I mean, Gardner could be someone that they want to trade. Someone who teams call, I mean, saying, "Hey, we like Gardner Minshew. We're willing to give you this for Gardner Minshew, and you may want to get that value if you don't see him as a starter. But if you've drafted someone you like a little more, then you have that guy as your now number two or your developmental guy. So
Well,
there, it's optionality.
the problem that we have is if you trade Minshew,
Hmm.
there's very
I
little
don't.
out.
I should have
Very
specified like in the middle of the season, like if by the
okay.
deadline, which gives
I got
you
you.
a couple months to groom someone
Oh
you
well,
may
then
pick.
right. That's a good way to look at it because think about it, right?
Hmm.
See, it will come down to. We'll move it forward to that. It'll come down to how the team's doing. If the team's out of it, you might as well. You might as well kind of like look. They tried like crazy to trade Ertz at the during the draft last year, but they thought they'd get more than they got. Wound up getting what was a 5 1/4 gallon. Is that the kid?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, well, look, they didn't get what they were hoping they would get, but they got something for them. The
right.
bottom line is, if you're not, although of course, who knew the Eagles would make the playoffs when they? That's the crazy thing. Yeah, I know their schedule was good, and people were killed. People were like, some of the fans on our message boards will not give the Eagles credit for those wins at the end because the schedule was so good. It's true, the schedule is great, but you can only beat the teams that are in your schedule. Okay,
That's
we'll
true.
see. But on your point here, before we move on here, I think they have to assess it. Because if they are out of it to trade down, let's say we don't have the schedule here, but what week it's going to bounce. Let's say they're 4-8,
Hmm.
they're not getting in. I mean, whatever it is. Or if they're 2 or 3 games under 500, this division's going to be better than it was last season. Um, and their schedule is obviously a little harder than last year.
Hmm.
You make a good point. Why not move them? But we'll see what happens when they get there. But just so you know, the quarterbacks that are out there right now, Fitzpatrick's come back from a major hip injury. We don't know
Hmm.
about him if he's going to play. Cam
Right.
Newton, the Panthers just said they're still in talks with him potentially to come back. AJ McCarron, Mike Lennon, who we're gonna be nice about this. He was not very good.
You don't have to be nice about it.
The Stork. The Seahawks said they want Geno Smith back. Josh Dobbs, nope. Josh Rosen, no. So it's slim pickings for quarterbacks right now.
It is, no doubt about it. All right. So those are the three visits we wanted to specifically talk about: Howell, Kayvon Thibodeau, of course, Sauce Gardner. I mean, obviously, you get 30. There's a couple other guys. I think I saw a report that Andrew Booth, the corner from Clemson,
Yeah.
there's going to be a ton of guys that the Eagles are. It's funny because when I tweeted the one about Thibodeau, and same thing with Sauce. It's like everybody gets excited. Oh my God, we're
Yeah.
getting him. We're
Yeah.
getting him. And it's like,
Yeah.
man, they
No.
get
It
30 of
actually has
these guys.
very little to do with it. It has very little to do with it.
Well, I mean, I would
Well, no.
imagine. Go
Here's
ahead.
how I'll explain it. I track these visits when anyone in the country. I did it for more or less 15 years. It's not
Mhm.
the player; it's the position. If the Eagles out of the 30 have 8 corner, if they bring in 8 corners, they're drafting a corner probably early. Even the Patriots gave clues by
Mhm.
the. It's not so much the player. I'm not saying they wouldn't. Obviously, if they could get close to Sauce Gardner, they got to trade up for him. But
Right.
it's more the position, not the player. That was it. The tells that I would get. Some year it just would be overwhelmingly like the percentage of them the team drafting that position, whatever
Mhm.
position they brought in the most. Now the Patriots did one thing was interesting. They literally they would work out more. They historically would work out more players private workouts more than any team, and
Mhm.
they work out long snappers every position. But if you track all 32 teams and their 30 visits, whatever position they bring in the most, almost always, not 100%, but
Mhm.
almost always, that's the position they're going to go with early because they want to oversaturate it. They want to really know. Now, one trick the Eagles did one year, if you remember when they brought in Zeke Elliott, I remember joking
Mhm.
with someone who was in the front office and I'm like, oh, you guys aren't drafting him. They goes, what do you mean? We could use a running back. I said, dude, this is not what you guys do. And the guy smiled and walked away. I saw the guy somewhere. It was
little
just
smoke
funny.
screen, little smoke screen action.
I don't know. See, GMs will tell you they don't do that stuff, but
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
A little bit,
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe.
What do you think? Tracking this stuff over the years.
Maybe it's intel. somebody else is going to draft them. It might be in your division. You might just want to, see what you're getting into. I think that's
Well,
there's part of that.
Andy Reid told me years ago when I asked him, he said one of the things they would do with, let's say they had 27 guys in, they were kind of done and they had 3 left.
Mm-hmm.
They would bring in guys that they probably would not draft because for whatever reason they had maybe the guy was lower on their board. But for free agency, they would go back to their notes of they have because you could tape these interviews, plus you can
Mm-hmm.
give them a physical in their building. You just cannot work them out at your building.
Right.
You could do everything else, take them up to the board, meets the coaches. If it's a good meeting, they'll go back and remember that. So I thought that was an interesting note. But
True.
God, I wish that's like at least 3 laptops ago from having that stuff. So I didn't send it to myself. I would keep this Excel file. Just wish I
Right.
did because you would die like when you'd see, oh my gosh, they brought in 12 corners. Well, obviously they drafted a corner. Yeah, they just did,
There you
But
go.
the way it works.
All right. Well, corner, D line, wide receiver. I think 2 first-round picks. We'll see what happens. I do expect Howie Roseman to be aggressive. We'll have a little bit more as we get closer to the draft on some of the intel that we get. In a minute, we'll get into some of those contracts you were talking about. I want to pause real quick to recognize our good friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. So make sure you're checking them out at PHLSportsNation.com. And we'll pause real quick for a word from our other great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you hop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get the very best deal. All right, so a couple contracts that are sort of interesting. Let's start with the linebacker, Kyzir White, who, by the way, I really enjoyed his press
It was
conference.
awesome.
Obviously, he's
Yeah.
from the Lehigh Valley, Emmaus, or Macungie area, depending on where you're from in that part of the valley. I swear, if you just like close your eyes and listen to him talk, he sounds like he's from Philly. He just sounds like a
Yeah,
Philly guy.
yeah. He did
He
have
really does. He
he
does. And,
did.
of course, he grew up he started off in Plainfield, New Jersey, which is I used to live near Plainfield, New Jersey. That's up in North Jersey. And then gravitated more west toward the Lehigh Valley. Obviously, was with the Chargers, was a safety at West Virginia. Talked about his transition to linebacker. He just kept getting bigger and bigger. And the contract details are interesting. So go ahead, tell us what you know about the contract.
Yeah, so Kyzir White, 1 year. The source I got it from, 99.9% accurate. I find this hard to believe,
Mm-hmm.
but why would they do a 2 year void on $2.5 million?
A 2-year void?
4 year void. So
4 year? Oh, dummy years, you mean again? Is
yeah,
that what
I
you
I
said?
just don't. Okay, so here's the deal. It's a 1 year deal with a 4 year void, 2.5 million fully guaranteed signing. Yeah, 500K in per game roster bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
So the remaining 2 million to make because it was reported I think originally up to 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't play, let's say he suffered a season-ending injury in training camp, he'll make a minimum of 5 million. Well, he only make 2.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll make somewhere close to 300 grand, and then the 2 million incentives are with playing time, uh, pro ball, and uh, certain certain metrics like certain performance based incentives.
Right.
So he might have he's going to make somewhere in the 300 grand range. Here's the way it was explained to me by a pretty good source.
Mm-hmm.
They're going into this deal thinking he's got a chance to okay, you remember Corey Nelson,
Yeah.
uh, Eric
I
Wilson.
remember.
Yeah. He didn't work out at all. In fact, it's
No.
amazing with these 1 year deals, these linebacker guys, sometimes they don't work out at
Nah,
all for
it's
them.
not been good. Nope.
No, exactly. But with Kyzir White, they're going in thinking this is going to be more of a 1 year marriage. It's if young. He's put some weight on. I don't know if it's 227, 232, maybe he's more than that. I don't know. He's no longer 218 or 219. We'll get it at OTAs. We'll get his weight for you.
Mm-hmm.
But look, this is a guy that I'm not saying that he's the reason why they won't draft a linebacker in the first round. It's just because they just don't do that. They don't believe in doing that.
Right.
But they're going in thinking that if he shows he can maximize his chance here, he could be here for a while. And he's young enough, and he's from the area. It's just a great story, and I love that interview. Boy, I've not heard him speak for, but I remember that he was younger brother of Kevin White, the former first rounder of West Virginia.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
Yeah,
I had forgotten
yeah.
about that.
Now
Yeah,
I met
great
Kevin, the
athlete.
nicest guy at ESPN, West Virginia guy. They brought him up. He visited ESPN. I mean, he spent the car wash. He spent the whole day there.
Right.
Nicest guy in the world. It just didn't work out because he was in a an offense that did not produce a lot of routes and so forth. But
Hmm.
um, Kyzir is a good player and he's pretty sharp. And the good thing is he's played in multiple schemes, 34-43 with the Raiders Chargers, whether it was last year with Brandon Staley or Gus Bradley running his 43. So
Hmm.
look, he's got a chance to do pretty well here. And by the way, and here's the big one, he could cover.
Yeah, well, that's why they brought him in. I mean, he can run, being the former safety, and that's what he talked about his brother. He said he was always running around chasing his a 4-4 brother, I think he said, or 4-3 brother,
Oh,
whatever
it's the
Kevin
other
White
brothers.
ran.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
forget.
yeah, he has a couple. So, the contract tells you, Adam. I mean, it's not. This is. I think this is the exact same guaranteed money that they gave to Eric Wilson last year, 2.5. If I went back and checked, I'll look.
I will look
So
at it. I have access.
yeah. So again, people have sort of tried to combat the idea that he's a placeholder linebacker. He is a placeholder linebacker. Now, maybe he's holding the place for himself to show that he deserves a long-term deal. But as we always say with contracts, the league tells you by your contract what it thinks of you. And right now, thought of Kyzir White as a player who's only worthy of signing a 1-year deal at maximum 2.5 million fully guaranteed.
Well, yeah, the,
So
the max will be five, 2.5 million.
I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. But I'm
Yeah,
saying the maximum fully guaranteed is 2.5 million.
right.
That's
If they
fully
cut him,
guaranteed.
right. Right. So I see what
Right.
you mean. So if they cut him, if he looks like Eric Wilson is right now,
Right? Isn't it
it.
basically the same deal?
I'm looking it up now. I'm looking at my file here.
Even if it's very, very close. So the
The
only point I'm
guarantee.
making
His
is he
guarantee
has a
is
chance, but
stronger.
these things don't normally lead. The last kind of 1-year placeholder contract for the Eagles that led to something better, I think, I'm probably going to be wrong about this, but I think was Alshon Jeffrey. Um, Unless there's another guy you can think of that earned, you could say Patrick Robinson, he earned it a long-term deal for somebody else, but for the Eagles, it was Alshon Jeffrey. These things tend to, you really are a placeholder until the team replaces you with somebody they hope is better. So
Yeah,
we will see with
point
Kyzir White.
1 year, 2.75 million, but the structure is different
Okay.
than Kaiser White's. The bottom
Right.
line is this guy is a better football player than Wilson. Wilson was brought in for scheme fit because he played in it.
Yeah, but you're saying that now. We weren't saying last year that Eric Wilson was going to struggle and this was not a good
No, no,
signing. So I don't want to.
no,
How do you know he's a better football player than Eric
no.
Wilson?
He's a better coverage. He's actually. It's funny. Wilson was better. He was known as a coverage guy, not a run guy.
Yeah.
But Kaiser White is actually a better overall football player, is the way it was explained to me. Now we'll see. Eric
Okay. I
Wilson.
mean, I guess, and nothing against Kyzir White because I tend to agree with you just based on the eye test because I thought he played well for the Chargers and especially in that game against the Eagles. But he's in a different scheme, different players around him, and the history of this is that the guy will be okay, and we'll see if it leads to something better.
Yeah,
I mean,
but they
yeah.
they see Wilson was just brought in because of this. They knew kind of what they were getting into because
Hmm.
of at least they thought because of the DC wanted him because he
Right.
knew him.
Hmm.
But yeah, so Wilson's deal last year max is 3.25 million. Um, he had 500 grand in incentives. So
So what was
it
fully guaranteed in Wilson's deal?
at signing, let me see. His base salary is fully guaranteed. Signing 1.5 million. He had a he had a roster bonus. The structure's a little different.
Okay.
The upside of White's deal is a little bit different. It is higher. It actually is. I want to say significantly higher. It's
Just higher.
1.75 million higher.
Okay.
But the fact of the matter is, to me, he's got a real shot to be here a while. Other than Corey Nelson was just a guy who you know how they've done this for decades now, whether it's corner or linebacker. take a shot on a guy,
Yeah.
cheap contract, particularly linebackers. You were saying, and
Oh man, this goes back to like Ernie Sims, right? I mean,
yeah,
it
exactly.
goes back to
Jatavis.
no, before that, to Keo Spikes. I mean, it really
Well,
goes far
he
back.
right, but he was a proven player though, where the other guys were just guys. You
True,
know,
true, true, true. But my point is, it's
I didn't care.
acquiring a new linebacker,
Yeah,
or a different linebacker, hoping he's going to be something
Chaos
that sticks
Spikes.
around.
Wow, wow,
Yeah, yeah. And
good
then Will
call.
Witherspoon and
Ah,
gosh, Jesus,
yeah.
this position.
I
I
was on
feel
a
like we
radio.
have
I
the
was on a
same
radio interview with
conversations all
Will.
the time.
What's that?
I feel like we have the same
I know.
conversation about
Look,
linebacker, cornerback, and safety
we we,
all the time.
we got to get that list together of since 2000, the older guys have 1 or 2 years left. For the old school Eagle fans, you remember Carlos Carson
Hmm.
and Art Monk at the end of his career, and all these guys. Mark Bavaro, yeah,
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 yeah, great.
unbelievable.
We have that
Anyway,
conversation. All right, so let's talk about Boston Scott's.
oh yeah,
Uh,
this one surprised me. Now I know why he came back. So his 1 year deal, it's one for 1.75 million, 1.1 million of his fully guaranteed at signing.
mhm.
900 grand of his 1.55 million base is fully guaranteed, and 200 grand signing bonus.
Mm.
Um, so you're talking. It's funny when we were talking about him potentially come back a month and a half ago. I just threw it. No one told me anything. I was just giving an example. I said, "Oh, you could guarantee some of 900 grand of his base instead of if you don't tender him as a restricted free agent." Well, that's what they did. Um, I'm just surprised that they would fully guarantee 1.1 million. See, here's the thing. Okay, before we get out of here,
Mhm.
so you got Sanders in the last year of his deal, right? Boston
Yes.
Scott will make the team. They love Kenny
Mhm.
Gainwell. Do you think they'll? I understand the draft is not so much about this year; it's about the future. Free agency is about now. I don't know. I don't know what to think about running back for the future for this football team. I'm just kind of flummoxed, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by over $1 million fully guaranteed for Boston Scott, because to me that
He deserves it, but they just don't use him
yeah,
enough.
no, it tells you that they want him to have a role as some kind of backup running back. But then you've got Miles and you've got um, Kenny Gainwell.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an awful lot to pay a third running back that you could probably easily get in the draft. Or I mean, look how easily they got Jordan Howard last year in the role that he played. It's sort of like, did you not take into account your huge offensive line? I mean, most running backs are going to perform well. You have a running quarterback as well, so that helps the running game. I'm a little I'm more than a little confused by it,
Yeah.
other than the
Yeah.
fact that he's been with the team and they know how reliable he is and what he can do. I mean, do they see is this a prove it deal? Do they think he can be
No,
something
is
beyond
Boston
this year
Scott?
for them?
No, he's going to be on the right. Look, I never say
No,
never.
I
They
know,
have
but
a
I'm
ton of.
saying, like, did they bring him back and give him this money because they feel like at the end of the year, maybe he will be by 2024 their second running back? I don't know. Like on a newer deal.
I Well, here's the thing. So as we learned last year, because Sanders once again got hurt,
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Howard got hurt. They were really only a two-man backfield. Regularly, when no one was hurt, it was a two-man backfield plus Hurts.
Right.
So the question is, and this is the thing that we're still trying to figure out. I'm sure they know what they want to do. We know what they would like to do is be a passing team.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, we just don't know yet as we speak here. 3 weeks from the draft, are they going to be a passing offense or a running offense? Are they going to do what they did, which turned their season around? I can't answer that. I just find it fascinating. They bought that Boston Scott to me. This contract tells you he's coming. He's not. There's no way he's getting cut.
Right.
He had no guaranteed money last year, but this year he does. They're guaranteeing well over half of his contract, and geez, here we go.
Well, I guess they're going to use him in some form or fashion. Do you think
Yeah,
he's kick returner this year? Because they
he's
don't really
been an
have.
emergency guy.
Well, I'm wondering if they're going to make him the kick returner.
I don't know. They got to get their return game. Their return game was not good. I'm being
Right.
kind.
Right.
They got to figure that out. And look, again, they've got 10 draft picks. They know it's something they have to work on. They got Jake Elliott straightened out big time.
Yeah.
They'll figure out the special teams needs to be better overall. Individually, the kicker's really good. The punter's got to be better. We'll see if they bring competition.
Mm-hmm.
And the punt and kickoff returns, they got to be better there. So look, it's interesting. Interesting that they got 3 weeks left. They made a huge trade. That was exciting, man. We appreciate what I underestimated is how many people like watching YouTube. I'm a little bit surprised. In fact, we're going to hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube probably in the next 2 weeks. We're less than
Yes.
100 people away. So thank you all for doing
Excited
that.
about that. Thanks for everybody for that.
Yeah, it's great. So I'm a little. Although let me ask you a question. When you listen to podcasts, do you?
Hmm.
Well, okay. You could always most podcasts are on YouTube. Do you go to YouTube or do you go to do you download like Apple? Do you download it or what do you do?
It's kind of crazy because I'm not a huge podcast listener, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Between this and the other podcasts I do, the Powder Blue
Yeah.
podcast with Frank Close, who's our Phillies
Bills.
insider for 97.3. Yeah, I love talking
Yeah.
Phillies. Glad to bring it back. I don't do a ton of pods, but nor do I. I mean, I don't listen to a ton, but I would. When I do, I'm usually either running, like jogging, exercising in the car. So it's not a YouTube thing. It's mostly for me. On a device like listening on my phone or
Yeah.
something. I don't sit down and watch podcasts. So I'm kind of mind blown by the number of people who will just sit down and turn on YouTube or YouTube TV, whatever, and just put a podcast on like a TV show.
You know
But
what's
that's why
funny?
we do this.
You know what's funny about that is like, for instance, there's this wrestling podcast called 83 Weeks. I know a lot of you listen to it with Eric Bischoff and Conrad Thompson.
Mm.
I don't. It's funny. I listen to it on YouTube, but I look up maybe 3 times. If they're showing video or they're talking about something I want to see, I'll pick my head. I'll move my mouse and hit the browser to see what they're saying. But
Right.
I just listen. I don't. Just weird. I don't know why I don't like go to. You could like my laptop. I listen to. I don't run. I'm not a runner like you, so I listen while I'm working. I like listening to music while I work, but sometimes it's just if the time moves me, I'm gonna go listen to a podcast. I just want to as a change up, just
Sure.
do something different because it's music is great, setting the tone. But sometimes I'm like, yeah, I want to I'll listen to Howard Stern or I'll listen to NFL radio or Sirius or whatever. But it's funny. I had underestimated YouTube's strength for us. We started the page technically 2 years ago, but it's really a year and a half ago, quite frankly.
Yeah,
And
about that. Right.
I'm a little bit surprised, pleasantly, obviously, that so many of you listened. Yeah, a lot of people have told us actually in email, "Hey, can you get more content on YouTube?" Okay, we
Yeah.
heard you,
You
and
ask, we
we've done that.
deliver.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Geoff, and everybody else who's technically gotten the stuff up there because people really like YouTube. Really cool.
All right. People will really like our next podcast too. That will drop Monday morning. And we're going to start to preview the draft a little bit, look back. We got some interesting stuff. We were going to go through the kind of the history of teams with 3 first-round picks, but now that the Eagles don't have any, we won't. But maybe we will take a look at the history of the 15th and the 18th just to see if that makes sense to stick there, what kind of talent you can expect, or if it makes more sense to make a deal and move on up. And we'll also have more on visits and things like that. So look forward to doing that with you. And that'll do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Want to thank our producer, Hunter Brody. Check out his work on YouTube. His channel is called Sports Talk with Broads. He's got a great website called broadsmedia.com. Remember to please check out the Powder Blue podcast on all your podcast platforms. Subscribe to it. Me and Frank Close. Loving talking Phillies and looking
Can't
forward
wait.
to the
I'm gonna
start of the
listen to it.
season, man. I can't wait for this team to lead the league in home runs and
Crushing.
errors.
Oh yeah, I know exactly because the middle lineup. So we could get. How long is your late? You drop. You said you drop them on Mondays. Is that when you would drop them?
Mondays, they're dropping Monday morning, afternoonish, every Monday morning,
Okay.
afternoon. Yeah.
How long are they typically?
About 30, about a little bit, not as long as maybe Inside the Birds, but not
Okay.
short either, like anywhere
Okay.
between 40, 45, 50 minutes.
And their last show is what? What are the topics in last show?
So we talked about that came out Monday morning. We talked about how Bryson Stott was able to get himself up on the major league roster, but not at the expense of Alec Boehm,
Yeah.
who's also up, and how they're going to work that out because both those guys need to play. So the fact that both are up with all the other guys makes it interesting to see how they work that out. And then we also did our season predictions for both the Phillies, but also World Series predictions and things like that.
Nice. Awesome. I'm so excited about the Phillies. I cannot tell you. Tomorrow's opening day. Of course, we got
Give
the
it
cold
2
weather.
weeks, my friend. Give them kicking the ball around the infield a few times.
I know, but you know what? They could be a train wreck with the air because the fan graphs, the defensive ratings are terrible.
Yes.
But Here's the thing. They're gonna be like, for those of you like me over 50, you might remember the Don Coryell Chargers of the 80s
Yep.
and 70s, how bad their defense was, but how many Dan Fouts put up crazy points. To me,
Yeah.
that's what the Phillies, although the Phillies pitching staff, tell me, do you think it's solid?
I do. I have high hopes for Ranger Suarez. I've been a big fan of
It's
his
been
for a couple of years
unbelievable,
now.
kid.
Really
Unbelievable.
enjoy him. Hope they stay healthy so nobody from the
Yeah.
bullpen has to go. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sort of excited to be done with the Vince Velasquez era. That's
Yes.
a big part
Oh,
of it.
I couldn't stand him. He's so not accountable.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, I got high hopes for Ranger, man. If he can get that fastball up to
yep.
95 or 96, he's at about 94 now.
Yeah.
That will make his changeup even more devastating. So,
How's the bullpen?
I mean, Brogdon's not been great, and I think that you look at Brad Hand and you look at Jarius Familia, and it's not all that
Oh,
different than when you had
Amelia.
Archie Bradley and Hector Neris, and
I
you hope that
know.
Corey Knebel winds up being a better closer, but you're not sure. To me,
Sure.
it all hinges on Sir Anthony Dominguez. Does he come back
Yeah.
and be that lights out type of electric reliever that he was before the surgery, or is he a guy who's going to struggle in his first year back? Because if he's really, really good, that could be really good for the bullpen.
It's gonna be fun though. Baseball's back, thank goodness.
Definitely.
Sixers are I'm not sure though. My guy Maxey, I'm so glad they didn't trade him last year.
How about
So
the 8 threes
ironically,
the other night? Whew.
Well, we'll leave you with one thing. I took so much heat when I said absolutely a year and a half ago, whenever the hell it was, when Harden was traded to the Nets. I don't usually get involved with Twitter anymore with any opinions, but I'm like, please, what's the GM's name? Excuse me.
Elton Brand or
No,
Daryl
no,
Morey?
Daryl Morey. I'm sorry, the president, whatever he
Mhm.
is. Daryl Morey, and I was like, I think he started following me after that. So whatever you do not trade Maxey. The kid is special. I know I'm going out on a limb. He couldn't shoot then,
Right.
but I said you do not give up special basketball players for a short term gain. Just don't do it.
Right.
I knew I was a minority, but his kid is special. My God, he's just his energy. I mean, if you're not a Sixer fan, you're not happy with what you don't give a crap about this. But if you're a Sixer
Mhm.
fan, you know what I'm talking about. This kid is special.
Yeah, I'm glad he did not move. That to me would have been a bad thing. So
Yeah.
very excited, and we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Sixers in the playoffs. It starts pretty soon, so
2 weeks.
we will see, and we'll see if Joel can get that MVP award. But all right, so that'll do it again for this episode of Inside the Birds. Want to thank everybody for flying with us inside the bird.